All righty, everyone. It's the top of the hour, and I think it's time for us to get started. Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, and I'll just head right on in. My name is Daphne Hitchcock. I'm president of Braille Literacy Canada, and it is my pleasure on behalf of the World Braille Day Planning Committee to welcome you to this 2026 World Braille Day event, where we'll be discussing Braille features on iOS and Android mobile devices. This webinar is being both live streamed and recorded and will be found on the NELS and Braille Literacy Canada YouTube channels. Before we go any further, the World Braille Day Planning Committee would like to acknowledge the historical oppression of land, cultures, and original peoples in which we now know as Canada. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land and will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty we have made to the Indigenous nations and peoples. Please take a moment to acknowledge the lands on which you live, work, and play. The Organization Committee for World Braille Day, Braille Literacy Canada, the Canadian Council of the Blind, Alternate Education Resource Centre, the Centre for Equitable Library Access, CNIB Beyond Print, CNIB Next Generation, the National Network for Equitable Library Service, and the Provincial Resource Centre for Visually Impaired had a lot of fun putting this event together. We are pleased to deliver this presentation during the month of January to celebrate World Braille Day. As with online conferences, please follow good etiquette by keeping yourself on mute, and I see many of you are. If you wish to unmute, it's Alt-A on a PC, Option-A on a Mac, and in the bottom left corner of your iPhone screen. If you would like to use the raise hand option, Alt-Y on a PC and Option-Y on a Mac, and double tap on your name in the participants list on an iPhone or go to the More tab. Please save the chat feature for urgent questions and comments. The information part of the session will be recorded and later posted on the Braille Literacy Canada YouTube channel, and we'll stop the recording prior to the final question and answer portion. The speakers for this presentation will let you know when there's an opportunity for you to ask a question, and we'll follow the whole thing by Q&A at the end. I would like to take just a moment right now to thank our sponsors, and we will be doing door prizes at the end of the presentation. We are very grateful for the continued support from two amazing companies, Humanware Canada, represented by Michelle Pepin, and Canadian Assistive Technology, represented by Steve Barkley. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Steve, for your deep interest in Braille technology, and your continued support. So we're ready. Fasten your seatbelts. Let's begin. We're very fortunate to have with us today Ioana and John, both who are very knowledgeable in Braille and Braille technology. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we'll begin by handing things over to Ioana. So thank you, Ioana. Thank you, John, and away you go.
Thank you, Daphne. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Ioana Ganderber. I work with SELA as a peer trainer and in general working with technology. I am also blind since birth and a musician. And in all of these things, my iPhone is my companion. So it's my pleasure to be here with you and discuss all things Braille and especially Braille input on the iPhone. And I am here with John, and he will be covering the Android side of things. And John, you want to say a few words to say hello?
Sure. I'm John with NELS, and I am also a Braille user. I'm an accessibility expert at NELS and work on a variety of testing projects. and I've used Braille throughout my life and have also explored using it on mobile devices, including Braille displays and on phones and tablets.
Thanks, John. So why did we decide to discuss? Well, first of all, it's of course Braille Anniversary Month, but we all know that Braille is a technology that is evolving. I mean, as it started from the few dots on paper, and now we are on mobile phones and Braille displays, and with new standards coming on the way. So it's very dynamic. But um, we felt that it is an interesting thing to try to explore the possibilities that Braille offers you, even if you don't necessarily have a Braille display. Maybe not everybody has access to a Braille display, or you may have one, but it's not portable, and you just find yourself with your mobile device and nothing else on hand. Well, more and more, this does not mean that you need to go without Braille. You will not be able, of course, to read Braille unless you have a Braille display, but you will be able to be able to write and use Braille writing skills or practice Braille writing skills using your Braille display, your mobile device. What are the advantages? Of course, you could say, well, I can have an external Braille display, or I can have a small Bluetooth keyboard and I can dictate. Yes, but what if those devices don't connect properly, or you don't have them on hand? And maybe sometimes you don't wish to dictate and have everybody around you hear what you have to say in a text message. It's much more private. And it's certainly Braille screen input on both Android and iOS is much faster than if you would try to locate the QWERTY keyboard on the screen. I personally, I can say that I think I can type as fast on my iPhone with as any sighted persons I know around me. So it's also a great way to practice if you want to learn Braille, and maybe you don't have a Perkins Braille or a Braille display. That shouldn't stop you from being able to practice your Braille writing skills, because while you might not be able to read Braille, you will get audio feedback. And so we're going to focus today. First, we're going to discuss a Braille input and how this looks on the Android side of things. And then we will move on to iOS. And between each, we'll have a short pause so you can ask questions. And of course, towards the end, we can dive in and have a discussion, hopefully, and lively. There will be your time for questions, and we can explore more advanced features if there's interest and time. And so that's the plan. John, do you want to take it over and discuss a bit what the prerequisites are to get started covering these devices and everything?
Okay, thank you. So to begin with, we'll cover a few basics about screen readers on mobile devices. And on Android and iOS, there are some similarities. So I'll start with covering some things that are similar, and the specific gestures will vary a little bit, but the concepts are the same. And throughout the webinar, we encourage people to listen and not try to follow along specifically, just so that you can get the information from the webinar, and there will be the recording you can review later once it's posted. And hopefully it will be a good way to get the information. We'll try to cover a overview of the Braille options on both devices. So with screen readers, the options built into each device are TalkBack on Android devices and VoiceOver on Apple devices. And they have some similar gestures for navigation. The three basic ones are to swipe left with one finger to go to the previous item, swipe right with one finger to go to the next item, and double tap to activate the item that you are focused on. You can also use Explore by Touch, which is to move your finger around the screen and hear what items you are passing your finger over. And personally, I find a combination of these with using Explore by Touch once I'm familiar with the layout of a screen, and then also using the swipe gestures if I'm close to a item I want to activate but not exactly on it. I can use uh, the Explore by Touch to get close, and then swipe gestures from there. And another item you may want to adjust is the device orientation. Generally, um, both of us have found that it's helpful to lock the device orientation so that when you change your device from portrait to landscape, then your content on the screen doesn't keep shifting around, especially with using a screen reader. That's quite useful. There are also options with uh, the Braille input that we'll discuss soon that will have separate rotation options for that, and that will be covered separately. And the last item I'd like to discuss with screen reader specifics is that it can be useful to learn how to turn your screen reader on and off, even if you have no sight and have it on most of the time. On both devices, you can set things up so that you can control this with the hardware buttons on the device so that you have a way to turn it off and turn it back on. And that could be a useful thing to configure or make sure is configured on your device and that you're aware how to toggle it on and off. And so now I think unless there's anything one of you want to cover with more background, I think we're ready to go into Android.
No, you couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better. And I'll let you get into the subject matter.
Okay, sounds good. Um, so on Android, their TalkBack has the option now to use Braille screen input, which is a physical keyboard or a virtual keyboard, pardon me, on your device screen that you use to enter Braille characters. And this can be used anywhere you can enter text. So like a text message or entering a web address into a browser or those sorts of things. And I'll now attempt to be a moment to switch to set up screen sharing, and I will show some basics of where to find the relevant settings, and then we'll get into the specifics of how to type in Braille.
While John is doing that, I just thought I would say one more thing. Maybe some of you may have tried Braille screen input on your device, but really and been discouraged because of making mistakes or it's not accurate or it's not intuitive. So we're hoping that after seeing us work Braille screen input on the screen and seeing what is possible and that it might inspire you to practice because really you can get better at it and hopefully we'll have shared some tips. Anyways, I will let John take over when the screen reading the screen sharing is done. And I hear there is movement, so.
Speech on demand.
So I think we're ready to go, and I'll just have one of the
Yes, it looks good, John.
Cindy's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
So I'm right now on my Android phone. I'm using a Samsung device, and I have TalkBack running, and I'm in the Google Keep Notes app, which we'll use in a minute to demonstrate the Braille entry. But first, I'm going to go into TalkBack settings just to show the area where you can adjust the Braille keyboard settings. And on TalkBack, that's the terminology they use. It's called the Braille keyboard. So I'm going to bring up the TalkBack menu with a three-finger single tap.
TalkBack menu. Actions in list.
And towards the bottom, we have TalkBack settings. So I'm going to use Explore by Touch to find that.
Screen search. Talkback settings.
And I'll double tap on this to open the settings.
Talkback settings. Navigate up button out of list.
And there's a number of options here, but I know the Braille keyboard is near the bottom, so I'm going to touch near the bottom.
Customize gestures 8 of 20 in list 20 items.
And I'll keep going down.
Customize menus 9 of 20. Automatic descriptions 10 of Braille heading 11 of 20.
And we have the Braille heading. I will swipe to the right and we should get the Braille keyboard option.
Braille keyboard 12 of 20.
And I'll double tap on that.
Braille keyboard. Navigate up button out of list.
And I won't cover all of these, but we'll go through a few of the options to get a sense for what's here. I'll just swipe to the right.
Braille keyboard. How to use Braille keyboard 1 of 8 in list 8 items.
And so the first time that you come in here, this will be the name of this will be a little bit different. It will say to set up the keyboard or something similar, and you can double tap on that to turn it on. And just a note as well how this works in Android settings. Once you enable it, you have a additional keyboard choice in the input list of keyboards that you can use, and that's how TalkBack the TalkBack Braille keyboard works. It's a different keyboard that you can choose to when you're inputting text. So we'll keep going to the right.
Review all gestures 2 of 8.
And that will let you review the gestures that you can use with the Braille keyboard. As you'll see shortly once we get into the demo, the gestures such as swiping left and right for moving around and Explore by Touch, those are temporarily not available when you're using the Braille keyboard, since it has its own set of gestures that you can use. And this option to review them will let you go in and review them. As well, there's some documentation that Google has. It's quite comprehensive on on the different gestures. So there's a reference if you'd like to explore that as well.
Languages, Unified English Braille 3 of 8.
And this will let you set up multiple languages. I just have the one in here right now, but you can set up different languages if you want to use multiple languages or Braille tables on your device. You can set that up in here.
Preferred typing language, Unified English Braille 4 of 8.
And this is where you can set the preferred one when you have multiple set up.
Preferred Braille grade, Contracted Braille 5 of 8.
And similarly here you can set contracted or uncontracted. And as you can hear, mine is set to contracted right now.
Layout, adapt to how you hold the device 6 of 8.
And this is what I had mentioned earlier about the rotation or the orientation of the Braille keyboard. There's two ways you can use the Braille keyboard with the phone. One is screen away mode, and that's what I'll be using in this demo. And that's where you hold the phone vertically in landscape mode, but it's kind of in a vertical position with your pinky fingers on the bottom and thumbs on the top. And that's and then your screen is faced away from you, so then you have your 6 fingers available for Braille screen entry, input on the screen. And the second mode is tabletop mode, and that's kind of like it sounds, where the phone is flat. And on Android, the orientation is the other direction. So you would have your, in screen away mode, the first one I mentioned, your charge port is to the right, and in tabletop, it's switched. So then your charge port's to the left when you lay the phone down. And this would be useful as well on a tablet. If you have a bigger device like a tablet, the tabletop mode would likely be the one that you would want to use for input. And I will swipe right again. And this layout option, right now it's on the automatic layout, so it will adjust, and I'll show that once we get into input. But if you want to use one mode or the other, and you always want to use that mode, you can lock it in here, and then it won't switch on you when you change the orientation of the device.
Include all press dots. Each press dot is part of the input, even if the dot is released before other dots on switch 7 of 8.
And this setting adjusts, it will include all of the press dots, even if you don't release them exactly at the same time. I haven't experimented with this particular setting. It works quite well with the default of on, so I've just left it there. And I think that's the main settings in here that I'll cover. So now I'm going to use the back button in the top left corner of the screen. I will touch to find that, and we'll get out of the settings and do some Braille entry.
Navigate up button out of list.
So we'll double tap on this.
Talkback settings. Braille keyboard 12 of 20 in list 20 items.
Back to the settings, so I will go back again.
Navigate up button out of list.
And we should now be out of the notes, but I will the settings, but I will explore a little bit just to find.
Verbosity
confirm.
4 of 20. Audio heading. New features in Talkback. Navigate up button out of list.
And I'm still in the settings, so I will double tap on this again to get out.
Keep notes. Text note. World Braille Day. Empty note. Labeled Braille. In list.
And there we are. We're out of the settings. I am in Google Keep, and I have a note created for this, so I'm going to double tap on this note that has focus, and we'll go into input field so we can do some typing.
Navigate up button out of list.
And I'm now going to find there's a title field and the body of the note. So I'm going to find the body of the note so we can type in there.
World Braille Day edit box title for note title. Note. Edit box.
And this is our note field, so I will double tap, which will bring up the keyboard.
Note. Showing Gboard.
And now I have the Gboard, the regular QWERTY style keyboard at the bottom of the screen. And to find the Braille keyboard, I'm going to use the input switch button, which is in my case is at the bottom left. You may also find it on the bottom right, depending on your device and the settings.
Add button. Switch in recents button. Switch input method button.
So this is the input method button. So I'll double tap on that, and this will bring up a list of the keyboards.
Keyboard hidden. Choose input method. Selected. Radio button. English left paren, Canada right paren. Gboard. In list.
And I know that my Braille keyboard is near the bottom part of the screen, so I'm going to touch near the bottom and then explore from there to find it.
Not selected. Radio button. Talkback Braille keyboard.
And I managed to touch right on it, but if I wasn't exactly on it, I will demonstrate I can move up and down.
Not selected. Radio button. Google voice typing.
So I moved up, and that moved me to the previous one, and I moved down slightly back to the Braille option.
Not selected. Radio button. Talkback Braille keyboard.
And I will double tap to choose this. And when I do this, it will close the list of keyboards, and we'll be back to the note.
Note. Swipe up with 3 fingers for more options. Screen away mode. Keep notes.
And so now we're back in the note, and it gave some information to swipe up with 3 fingers for more options. That's the context menu for the Braille keyboard, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I am now ready to type. And before I do this, I wouldn't necessarily need to do it every time, but just to demonstrate the calibration. As Iwana mentioned earlier, you can there's the accuracy sometimes can be not as quite as accurate as you would like. So I'm going to calibrate the dots, which tells TalkBack when more specifically where my fingers are for the different dot positions. So I'm going to hold all 6 fingers down at the same time for about 3 seconds. We'll hear a sound and then some speech to confirm. So we'll do that now.
Dot position updated.
So it's now updated the dot positions, and I'm now going to start typing my note. And I also have keyboard echo set to, I believe, characters and words, and you can adjust that. It uses the same echo setting as for a regular on-screen keyboard, like the Gboard keyboard we just had open, and that's in TalkBack settings under the verbosity option. There's a section in there you can adjust the keyboard echo to your preference. So I'm now going to type my note. I will type Braille is great. So I'm going to do a .6 for the capital.
Cap. L.
And it's registered in L. I didn't want that, so I'm going to delete the previous character, and I can do that with a one finger swipe to the left.
L deleted.
I can try my character again.
B. R. L.
And as I do a space, it will translate the word.
Braille.
And I do a space by a one finger swipe to the right, and as you heard it put the word in, so now I'll continue typing.
I. S.
And a space.
Is. G. R. T. Dots 235.
And I'm now going to do a new line, which is two fingers swipe to the right. So it's similar to the space, but space is one finger and new line is two finger swipe right. So I'll do that now.
Great exclamation mark.
And it didn't say new line, but it's entered the new line character. And as well, I can also review the characters. There's some gestures available for that. They're a little bit different than the regular talkback gestures with the device in a screen away mode like this, but the concepts are similar. So I can do left and right swipes here to review by characters. Or I can also change the granularity, but I'll show the granularity first, and then we'll move back through the message a little bit. So I can do three finger swipes. I guess left and right in this case when I'm in the screen away mode here. So I can move by granularities. And this is similar to some talk to back gestures that do the same thing when you're not in the Braille screen, the Braille keyboard mode. But if I swipe with three fingers to the left.
Proofread. Paragraphs.
And each time I swipe, it moves an item. So first one is proofread, and then it moved back to paragraphs. I'm now going to go to the right to move the other direction, and we'll go until we get to characters.
Proofread.
So there's proofread. I'll do one more.
Characters.
And so now if I've chosen the granularity I want, I can now swipe up and down with one finger now to go back and forward. So if I go up.
Braille is great. Exclamation mark.
And the first time it read the whole item, but now I can move by it's moving by characters. So the next swipe was to the exclamation mark. If I keep going,
T, Tango, A, Alpha.
And it's giving me phonetics. That's a setting you can adjust in the talkback settings. And if I go one finger swipe down, I can go forward.
A, Alpha, T, Tango, exclamation mark. New line end of field.
And so there was the new line character there, and I can continue typing. There are also commands for selecting text and cut and copy and paste. So you can do some editing still while in the Braille keyboard mode. You don't have to switch to the on-screen keyboard. And now I'm going to show the context menu for the Braille keyboard, which has some options we might want to adjust. So to do that, I can do a three-finger swipe up.
Braille keyboard options. Switch to uncontracted Braille in list.
And now my talkback gestures, the regular talkback gestures are available again. So I'm going to turn my device into portrait orientation, and I can use the gestures we were using before. So I can swipe left and right to move through items. And the first one is if I wanted to switch to uncontracted, I could choose this option, and that would toggle that. And you'd also find options for languages in here. I won't have any since I only have the one language, but if you had multiple languages configured in the settings, you could change languages from here.
Update dot positions.
And that option works similarly to what we did to update the positions, except it will do one hand at a time. So you'll do, I believe it's right first, and then left, it will talk you through, but it's the same effect as the holding all fingers down to calibrate the dots.
Review gestures.
And that will let you review the possible gestures.
Open tutorial.
And I forgot to mention that when you set this up for the first time, you will get a tutorial that guides you through some basics of how to use the Braille keyboard, entering some letters and doing some some of the gestures. And if you want to review that again, you can open it from this option here.
Settings.
And this will go into the Braille keyboard settings, the same settings we were in when we explored the TalkBack settings earlier.
Close button out of list.
And that's the end of the options. So I will now double tap on this close option to get out of the menu here.
Braille is great. Screen away mode. Keep notes.
And we're back to our note. And to dismiss the Braille keyboard, there's a couple of options. I could do a 2-finger swipe down, and that would dismiss the keyboard, but it would be active the next time I double tapped in a text area. Or I can also do a 3-finger swipe down, which will dismiss the keyboard and switch to the next input keyboard. So we'll go back to the QWERTY option. And in this case, I'm going to, oops, I pushed it out there. I'm going to backspace, which will delete it. And that was a 1-finger swipe left.
Tap deleted.
I'm going to switch to the next input method, which is a 3-finger swipe down.
Cap
And
deleted.
it didn't register. I'll try again.
Add button. English left parenthesis right paren QWERTY shown. Showing Samsung keyboard.
And so now it's switched to the next keyboard. In my case, I have both the Google keyboard and Samsung configured on this device. So it's you may have noticed the first time we were in Gboard, and now it said Samsung keyboard. They are quite similar. If I wanted to switch back to the Google one, I could use the input switch option like I did to change to the Braille keyboard, and I could choose which one I want to use. But I've now exited the Braille keyboard, and I have a QWERTY keyboard up again. So if I wanted to explore the screen further to find the back button or another control on the screen, I now don't have the Braille gestures active anymore. And that's what I have for now on the demonstration on the Android side. I'm now going to we'll pass to Ioana for questions for iOS. But before that, if there's any specific questions, we could take questions on Android, and then we will next move to the iOS section.
Just as a reminder, you can raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead, Daphne. Yeah.
I was just going to say the same. Ioana, yes, please, you can raise your hands or ask questions if you have any for John. And if not, Ioana, why don't you just go ahead?
Okay, well, and we'll have ample time to compare the two and discuss anything else after we're both.
But before you go ahead, we do have a question, and I am not sure if I have your name pronounced correctly. Chinidu, if you'd like to go ahead with your question, and you need to unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah,
Hello.
Thank you, John, for that lovely presentation. I just have a brief question. Do I have to download this Braille keyboard on my Android device, or what's Android version is it compatible with? I can't find it on my Android phone.
Yeah, so it's part of TalkBack, so you don't have to download anything extra. I think I don't remember exactly. It's fairly recent. I think it might have been 13 or 14, somewhere in there when it came in. I don't remember exactly, but it's been for a couple of versions. And just on that point, you might find some slight variation. I have a Samsung device, and the documentation that Google has is quite accurate. But for example, there's an option to customize the gestures, and that's available on some devices like the Google Pixel devices, but isn't yet available on the Samsung. I expect it may come at some point, but at this point, the Google and Samsung, since they have their own TalkBack versions. It's they're slightly different, but in general, they the main just same gestures apply. You might just find some slight differences, like the customized input not being available yet. But in general, yeah, as long as you have a recent version of Android that's within the last 2 or 3 versions, I would say, um, then you should have the Braille keyboard. And you'd know if you go into your TalkBack settings, there's a Braille heading and then there's a Braille keyboard option in there. So if you see that, then you know you have it. And if you don't have it, then you may want to just check to see what version of TalkBack you have, and if there's an, an update that you can install, or it will depend on your the the version of TalkBack. But you should have it if you have a quite recent version.
Oh, okay,
Great.
thank you.
And we have another question from Alexandru. Go ahead, you need to unmute Alexandru.
Hey everybody, I've got a quick question actually. Is the only difference between screen away and tabletop the one related to the port? Like in screen away, you've got the port on the charging port on the right, and in tabletop, we've got it on the left. Is this the only thing, or are there any others to be aware of? Thank you.
They're quite similar, and I will actually enable the screen share for just a second, and I didn't remember to demo that, so I will demo that quickly.
Started screen share. Press F6 to switch between open Zoom windows. Share John's A50. Alexander.
There you go. It's on.
No title. Editing. Braille. No title. World Braille Day. Braille is great. Braille.
So I'm going to go back
Editing.
into the keyboard here, and we'll show the switch quickly here.
Symbols. In recents. Button. Symbols. Input method. Keyboard hidden. Choose input method. Not selected. Radio button. TalkBack Braille keyboard.
So this is the same process I went through before. I'm just switching to the Braille keyboard.
Braille is great. Screen away mode. Swipe up with 3 fingers for more options. Keep notes.
So I'm in screen away mode, and yeah, that's the main difference is just how you hold the device. So right now I'm in the vertical position, and if I turn it to horizontal.
Tabletop mode. Place your device with the charging port to the left. To update dot position, hold down 6 fingers.
And if I was going to use this, I would just rotate, and then my hands would, of course, be in a similar position to typing on a Perkins Brailler or a Braille note taker device in that orientation. But that's the main difference. And if I switch back, if I rotate the device again,
Screen away mode.
it switches back to screen away. But that is the main difference, is just how you hold the device. The commands and everything as far as how you type are exactly the same. It's just the position basically, but that's the main difference. Should be the only difference.
Great. Thanks, John. And Alyssa, and this will be our last question before we go to Ioana. So Alyssa, go ahead. You need to unmute.
Hi. Yeah. This might be a strange question. But I'm wondering, John, if you had Samsung keyboard, then maybe you have a Samsung device. So I was wondering if you know, is it commonly understood that with like the lower end of, say, the Galaxy A range, that the TalkBack Braille keyboard can sometimes be a little bit slow to respond to things?
No, I've only had used the one device with it, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. But yeah, I use, just for reference, it's a Samsung Galaxy A54, which I got a couple of years ago in 2023, I believe it was. So it's kind of a mid-range. So I haven't used it on they do have some more budget line, a budget end, kind of lower end devices. So I'm not sure if what performances on those. I have used TalkBack on one of those devices, and it seemed to work quite well, but I'm not sure on the Braille screen input side. But as far as this kind of mid-range device, it seems quite responsive. At times, I've found that I need to that things are a little bit hit and miss as far as the maybe some characters not being entered quite accurately, but I'm not just sure if that's my technique, since I haven't used this a huge amount, or if it's just how the keyboard functions. But in general, I found the responsiveness. I haven't had any real lag on my device.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And Ivana, go ahead.
Okay, so let's move on, turn the page. I will now take 2 moments to set up my iPhone so everybody can follow along, whether you just listen or you can see the screen. 2 seconds.
Yeah, 51% battery power. Control center. Camera. Button. Screen mirroring. Button. Actions available. Screen mirroring. Screen living room. Zoom ins. Button. Zoom ins. Zoom ins. Button. Living room.
And that looks good. Ivana, it's on.
Screen mirroring. Button. Actions available. Voiceover off.
Okay, almost
Voiceover
good.
on. Airplane mode. Switch button. Off.
Okay, so now you should actually be hearing the screen reader through the computer sound sharing system. Good. We are in business. So there are quite a few similarities with Android, and of course there are some differences. The main one being that since iOS 18, and this year again also, there have been a host of features added to the iOS Braille screen input. So in iOS, you can do more than just edit using Braille, a note, for example, or writing a text message, etc. You can apply all the commands you may know from your Braille display if you have one, and control your phone with Braille commands. And this started being an option since last year, iOS 18, and there were more options this year, and now you can customize all these commands. And I will look at those options as well. Sorry, my phone wants me to look at it, which is so pointless when you cannot see. Anyways, we're back. So so I will cover the command mode. This is called the command mode because you can indeed command the iPhone. But first, I will cover all the similar functionality with between Android and iOS. So let's go to settings and find out how to enable the Braille screen input.
Messages unread. Emilia Milhero unread. Emilia Milhero. CC Paul. Settings.
Okay, perfect. Settings. Now we are going to accessibility, voiceover, and then Braille.
Iwan again Draver. Family. General. Accessibility. Action button. Accessibility. Button. Accessibility. Heading. Read and speak. But audio descriptions. Off physical and motor. Heading. Set. Accessibility. Personalized iPhone Waze. Vision. Heading. Voiceover. On. Button. Voiceover. Switch button. On. Speaking rate. Heading. Heading not found. Speaking rate. Adjust the speech. Braille. Voiceover recognition. Braille. APH Mantis Q40. Match input and output tables. Switch button. On.
Let me just slow down my speech a little bit. It might be just slightly fast.
Sound curtain. Switch button. Done. Button. Voiceover settings. Heading. Speaking rate. 60%. 55%. Settings. Status cells.
Beautiful. Okay, so we are in Braille settings. Here is where we would set up all the commands pertaining to Braille displays and also to Braille screen input.
Equations use Nemeth code. Braille. Heading. Match input and output table. Input and output. English.
Here, before we do get into Braille screen input, we have the ability to, in iOS, you can have a different Braille input table used for writing and output tables for reading. I find that personally very confusing. But I suppose it could be a useful tool if you, for example, are comfortable reading contracted Braille on your device, but you're not comfortable writing in contracted Braille. You could set it so that you read in contracted, but write in uncontracted. I personally have it set that they always switch together. So let's find the Braille screen input.
Braille screen input button.
Double tapping here.
Type in Braille, launch apps, and control your device using Braille screen input. Place one finger from each hand at the top and bottom edges of the screen and double tap with both fingers at the same time to start Braille screen input. To exit Braille screen input, slide two fingers in opposite directions.
Okay, so the moment you do this, you already hear a brief explanation, but if you want to unpack this, there are basically two ways that you can start the Braille screen input. By default, none of them are enabled, so you will have to enable the the activation gesture of your choice. The first one is, as we just heard, to tap twice with two fingers, one on each edge of the phone, on the top and bottom edge. And by the way, if you have an iPad, and even if your iPad is in landscape mode, you would need to tap on the top edge, so the further one away from you, and on the closer one with two fingers. So that's the main idea, is top and bottom. You take two fingers and you tap twice. That's one option. The other, and which is familiar to people that because it is has been available for longer, is to use the rotor gesture. Some of you may know the rotor gesture is basically kind of doing an imaginary rotation of two fingers on the screen, and you have to add Braille screen input to the rotor, and you can reorder it to your desired position and start it that way. I personally find this welcome addition of this gesture, that you can quickly invoke anywhere, and it's much quicker. And of course, because we have Braille screen input that can be used to command the phone, I do not need to be in a text edit field to activate this.
Use activation gestures. Switch without using the gestures. You can still start automatically when editing text. Switch button off.
That is an interesting option, to start automatically. So you can have it set so that whenever you are in an edit field, the Braille screen input becomes active. I personally don't like this, as much as I love Braille screen input, but I still want to be able to review I don't want it to cover my whole screen. So sometimes you have a toolbar or things. So basically, because it's so quick to activate the Braille screen input, I don't want it to always be active.
When a text control is activated, keep active until dismissed. Switch button.
Okay, and we have other customizations.
After you launch an app or choose customize commands button.
You can customize all the commands.
Learn dot positions. Switch button on.
It has a new option that I'm not sure how useful it is or how well it works, but supposedly it learns automatically the positions of your fingers on the Braille screen, so you wouldn't even need to calibrate. I personally think you always seem to, just a sec. So let's activate the Braille. We have, as in Android, we have various Braille modes, orientations, depending on how we hold our device. I will activate my Braille screen input now with two fingers. Double tap on the far edges of the device.
Braille screen input.
We heard a sound and a confirmation.
Orientation unlocked.
Now, by default, I think the first time you use Braille screen input, you will get a little bit of a tutorial. So as you're trying to use it, you will get helpful tips, which I cannot unlike in Android, I cannot restart the tutorial about Braille screen input, which is a pity. But I'm holding right now my phone in the screen away mode. So my phone is resting on the two pinkies of my two hands, and I'm using the typical Brailling fingers to touch the screen. And I used three fingers flicked down. So that means basically flicking towards the bottom long edge of the phone to unlock the orientation. You can also do that same gesture to lock the orientation. Right now it's screen away. If I put it flat on the table.
After you launch an app or choose an item, Braille screen input will stay active in command mode. Landscape, screen away mode. Landscape, tabletop mode.
Exactly. So tabletop mode, now the same thing. I could now put it down and hold my fingers as if I would type on a Brailler and type. Let's put it back in screen away.
Landscape, screen away mode.
and I will lock the orientation. Personally, because I know that I will always use it on screen away, I find it better and easier and more accurate to lock the orientation. So I three-finger flick down.
Orientation locked.
Now, how to calibrate the keyboard. And this is such an important step. And I think that too many people may be discouraged by the poor typing results they are getting and don't realize that it really helps when you're calibrating. So to calibrate on iOS, you press quickly 4, 5, 6 together, and right away followed by that is 1, 2, 3. So you have to do it quickly, otherwise it will enter them as characters. So tap, tap.
Dot positions calibrated.
Okay, so it has calibrated the dot positions. Now, let's go, and this gives me a chance to demonstrate there are two main modes one is the Braille edit mode that we know for editing and edit fields, but if holding my phone, I flick with 3 fingers to the right, I go to the command mode, and this will enable me to actually control my phone. So I will use, just to demonstrate what this can do for you, I will use that to go to the home screen. So I'm going 3 fingers flick right to go to the command mode.
Command mode.
And I will press H, which if you had a Braille display, you would press space plus H to go to the home screen. Well, I don't have a space bar on my iPhone to press with, but in this command mode, I just have to press H and I go to the home screen.
Home settings.
I'm in the home screen and on the settings, which was the last thing I opened. Let's go back to edit.
Braille entry.
The same gesture, 3 fingers flick right, toggles between these two modes. The nice thing, one of the main things, even if you decide you do not want to use Braille screen input for editing, but one very useful feature is to quickly find an app. Let's say you're in a noisy environment, you cannot use Siri. You can just invoke the Braille screen input while you're on a home screen and type the first few letters of the app you're looking for. I will open Drafts 4, which is a note-taking app.
Drafts 4. Opening Drafts 4. 1 password 7. Command mode. Drafts 4. Text field is editing. Insertion point at start.
Okay,
Actions
it said quite a few
available.
things. Okay, hello. So I typed DRA, and it would tell me how many apps I have available, and I could have flicked up and down until I hear the app I want that matches these criteria. I found Drafts 4, and then I do the same gesture as an Android for enter, 2 fingers, flick right, and now I'm in a draft. Now let me show you. So I will go back. As I did this, I have my keyboard set up that once I'm in an app, I'm in command mode. So right now I'm in that mode where I can issue commands that you could, similar to what you would do with your Braille display, but I want to edit. So I'm going to go to Braille entry, 3 finger flick right. And
Dot 6. H. E. L. L. O. F. F. Space. Hello.
well, FF meant exclamation mark. There is a funny lag. I think it has to do with the way I'm sharing my screen, but normally I will type faster, and I have turned typing feedback to words only for myself, but as a beginner, I strongly encourage you to have feedback for each letter. I flicked right to input a space. It's the same as in Android. I will now get a new line.
New line.
With 2 fingers flick right. And I will write something else just to give you a sense.
Dot I space. I. A. O. E space. Hose.
You.
Space.
Well,
you.
I didn't like the word hose.
You. Hose.
So I did a 2 finger flick left to delete the entire word. So I'm back to, I deleted the word hose.
H. O. Key E. Space. Hope. Space. Space.
You are
space. R. E.
enjoying
Y space. Enjoying.
this
T space. This. D. E. N. O. Peer space. Demo.
Okay, so now we have a few ways to review the screen. I can either dismiss the keyboard completely by doing a pinch gesture, either pinching out with 2 fingers or in with 2 fingers, and this will exit. And then I can use my familiar iOS gestures to review the text, or I can stay within the keyboard, which is practical if you want to continue editing and don't want to go in and out. So I hold down a finger of my left hand, and while I do that, I will flick up and down with 1 finger of my right hand to determine the granularity of the cursor movement.
Words.
So now it says words. I can go lines, and now I will flick left. So I'm keeping always a finger down of my left hand to have these gestures take effect.
I hope are enjoying this demo.
Okay, so it seems to me like maybe
Words. I hope are.
Okay, so the word
R.
you, I accidentally deleted it. So I went before the word are, and I will now input you.
You space you.
Okay, so I just corrected the missing
lines.
Let's hear the whole thing.
I hope you are enjoying this demo.
Okay, so let's go back. I can
new line.
I inserted a new line. A nice thing is also we have a quick spell check, which is better than nothing. It's not great because it doesn't spell out the suggestions that it offers you. But let's say I'm writing the word Braille with 3L.
.6 B R A I L L E.
Okay, so
space Braille.
Now I heard that it bungled this word, so I'm suspicious. I suspect I made a mistake. So after I did space and heard this word, I can flick up or down and hear suggestions.
Braille. Braille.
The unfortunate thing
Braille.
is that it doesn't really spell them out. So, for example, if I have to choose between the words cats with a S or with a CAT apostrophe S, then you're in trouble because you don't know which is which. But still, it's sometimes it can, in a pinch, help you quickly correct your spelling mistakes.
New line.
Okay,
Braille.
so these are the functions that are basically covering Braille input. I will just show you, for example, the power of using the command mode. I will go into command mode now.
Command mode.
With a 3-finger flick right. And some of you may know that if you have a Braille display and if you press spacebar plus K, you get into a help mode where you practice all the gestures. And let's do that now. So I will press K.
Starting help. To stop help, perform a 4-finger double tap or 2-finger scrub or press escape on the keyboard.
And here is where I can experiment with all sorts of commands. Let's see, what does 156 do?
.1, .5, .6, spacebar, magic tap.
So that's a magic tap. So even while staying in Braille command mode on my screen, I can do magic tap. You may wonder, why do you want to do that? Well, it's especially interesting, for example, if I'm on a web page and I am looking for a book on Sila Library, which is where I often get my reading done. I can explore the web page and then all of a sudden find something I would like to write in, and then I don't need to go in and out from Braille. I can just stay in this Braille environment. A nice thing, speaking of web pages, is you can use .1,
.2, .5, spacebar, home.
Sorry, okay, let's get out of help with a back command. 1, 2. Come on. Oh.
Space. Portrait. Stopping Braille screen input. Heading not found. Settings keyboard hidden.
Okay, so I just exited the
Dock.
Braille,
Safari.
and I'm going to Safari. So the nice thing is you can use quick navigation keys. So for example, let's go to Safari.
Skip to main content. Link.
I use the typical double tap gesture.
Skip to main address. ca1.foxgo.com. Text field.
Okay,
address.
Let's go.
Braille screen input.
I activated the Braille screen. Sila. Now I can go to command mode and see if I don't already have an auto suggestion done. So I flick right with 3 fingers to get command mode.
Clear text button. Selected. Vertical line CELA. Library.ca.
And I can write I did basically did a command for just going to the next element, but staying in Braille mode. Now I'm going to activate it with dots 3, 6. And you don't have to remember all these dots, but those of you that know commands for a Braille display, they can immediately apply those because they are the same.
Keyboard hidden.
So now I should be.
Public library service accessibility preferences pop-up button.
Okay,
Accessibility
so now
menu,
let's see. I
navigation,
want to.
landmark, Braille entry.
I'm going to Braille entry, and I want to find the next heading. So I can write H.
Headings.
And now I can flick up and down with one finger.
Heading level 2 main, landmark. Smoke and Whispers, Oxford Investigations number 4, heading level 3, link.
Okay, and I can even write, let's say, heading, I can write the number 1 and see if there is a heading level 1 further down the page. So I'm writing number sign and then 1.
Heading level 1. No item found. No item found.
Okay, well, there aren't any. But all that to say is that you can navigate quite quickly and efficiently on a web page using Braille on your screen, which, anyway, so that just gives you, I have only scratched the surface. I would need another whole episode to tell you all the ways in which you could use Braille on your iPhone. And I'm not even talking about all the new features that started in Braille access mode, which pertain to Braille displays and that Apple introduced this year. You can now, if you have a Braille display, have open BRF files, which as a musician, I really am happy about. You can, you even have a Nemeth calculator, you have many other functions. But I should say one more thing, because I wanted to focus not on Braille display-centric functions. If you have a QWERTY keyboard and all this Braille typing on a screen without buttons is alien, any Bluetooth keyboard that you connect to your iPhone, you can now transform into a Braille writing device. So there is such a, I think it's called Braille input, and you can find that in the Braille section of VoiceOver. I will not cover it because I just want to stick to the Braille screen, which I think is just underused or underexploited. And I know personally quite a few people that are good Braille writers, and they're slowly picking their way through the QWERTY keyboard on screen. And if you could explore this option, it would open up lots of possibilities. So to wrap up, why don't we bring it all together, and I will write John a quick message using Braille screen input, and he can hopefully receive it and write
Braille
back.
screen input.
So
doc, so keyboard hidden.
now I could find my messages app, because that one I do know where it is, but I swear I have so many apps that I have no idea on my screens where they are, because I just bring them up with Braille. Let's assume I didn't know where my messages app is. I'm going to go to Braille screen input.
Braille screen input.
I'm writing
M-E-11-S, 3 apps, messages.
Oh, and the first option was messages. I'm going to do the enter gesture, two finger flick right.
Opening messages, command mode, search field. Dictate, button. Compose, button. Compose, edit, button. Filter, button. Conversations.
I am
John,
swiping.
pinned.
I'm doing the equivalent
Actions
of
available.
swipe. Okay, I'm doing the equivalent of swiping right, but which is the dot 4 in if you would have a Braille display and in the command mode. So I'm now going to
Keyboard
open
hit messages. Your text message. Hi. All red. One. Add. Message. Text message bullet RCS. Text field.
the edit field isn't active. I will press 3-6 in the Braille command mode.
Keyboard hidden.
Now I got a sound. It didn't say text is editing, but I'm going to trust it.
Braille entry.
What shall I tell you, John?
I space A-O-P-E space hope what space A-E space R dots 1 2 3 5 8 the I space Z space C space much F U space Z space I space I A M space M dot E space while T A L K I space talking T space O U space B L space L O V I space F O F space friends.
I can review. I quickly go to command mode, and I swipe. I do the equivalent of the swipe gestures left and right to hear the text.
Command mode. Add, but, message, text field, is editing. I hope you are having as much fun as I am while talking to our Braille-loving friends. Character
And now I
mode,
can
insertion point at end.
one more to the
Send,
right,
button.
and I can do 3-6, which activates a control.
Send. Dictate, button.
And John should be receiving this. So really, somebody that just starts off now with the phone could just use Braille screen almost, and instead of swiping. Of course, it's not as good because you need two hands for this, but if you're in a Braille environment, then that's just great, and it's a great practicing mode. One more thing, speaking of that, they do have a Braille, starting iOS 26 this year, they added a one-handed Braille writing mode. It works. I got it to work for me. It's a bit of a learning curve because you're doing each column of Braille at a time. So if I would do the letter P, I would write 3 dots and then 1 dot. And I mean, it's a whole learning curve. It's kind of, but if you've got patience and are curious, you can explore it. It does work. So now I can walk with my guide dog and type in Braille. Well, I can't yet, but I suppose it's theoretically I could. So that's basically all a quick overview of what Braille can do for you. There are many other ways you can add keyboard shortcuts, for example. So when I have a Uber driver standing by, I can write in Braille just UBM because I set that up, and it will input a whole message that I have pre-programmed in iOS. I am blind, please come look for me, etc. So really, there are many, many hidden treasures that one could explore with Braille screen input. But enough for now. John, I'm hoping to see, did you get my message?
Yeah, I received it, and I'm just in this just responding to it with the Braille screen input like we did before. I won't share just because it's you're just
I can stop mine if you want, or no, it's fine.
Yeah,
but you can put the sound, maybe, or no, that's okay.
I'm almost done here, but it's the same, using the same process I used before, and I'm just going to review, and then we will, I will send it.
John Elioha is typing.
Oh, I hear John Elioha is tapping, all of you guys. That's a good sign. I should say that there is a gesture to go
John Elioha,
to
stop
quickly...
typing.
There is
Message
a
received from John. Yes.
Oh.
It's nice to learn about the possibilities.
You see, I just got a message. That's so nice. Okay, so there is a quick way to switch Braille tables for those of you that you speak multiple languages, or, for example, you may wish to have both the contracted or uncontracted tables added to your list of tables. So in this case, in Braille display, with Braille display active, is it active now? Oh, okay. I cannot hear you now.
Stopping Braille screen
see.
input.
I see.
2:09 p.m.
With the Braille. Oh,
Alex,
sorry.
primary voice, Braille screen input.
Okay, so I'm back in Braille screen input. With the Braille screen input active, 2 fingers flick up will cycle through the various Braille tables. I personally...
French, S.
French.
Romanian. English, unified, uncontracted.
So I have both contracted and uncontracted available.
German, contracted. German, uncontracted. English, unified, contracted.
Anyway, I'm back in the... so it's a quick way to cycle through the available tables. 2 finger flick up. Okay, that's it. We've done it. We've covered both operating systems, Braille screen input, and
Stopping
now
Braille
it's
screen
time
input.
for everyone else to ask their questions and discuss and comment. So we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Wonderful, Ioana. Thank you. What a marathon. We have a couple questions here. We'll go with Alyssa first, followed by Mike. So Alyssa, if you'd like to unmute, go ahead, please.
Hi. First of all, Ioana, that was a really, really good demonstration. I am absolutely, which it sounds like you are, I am absolutely fanatical about a Braille screen input. I talk to everybody about it. I'm just trying to go around converting people all the time. You should type like this if you know Braille. Why would you not type like this? You're being ridiculous. So yes, and you're right about the one hand input mode. It is a bit of a learning curve, and actually that's what my question is about. So if you type in one-handed mode, I have never quite figured out, do we have to calibrate both sides of the screen if we're only going to use one hand? Do we have to calibrate on both sides of the screen?
Nope.
Or just with the hand that we're going to type with?
Just with a hand, and I think it's double tap and hold. They have a gesture.
Oh, that's the three finger double tap and hold. That's what goes into one-handed mode. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you do a 3-finger double tap, so it will be the fourth gesture, I suspect. I mean, I accidentally calibrated my fingers, but I can't now remember what the gesture is for Braille screen input. But no, you do not. The whole idea is that you want to use it the way you would type on it. So you would stay put with the fingers in the same position where you are typing with one hand and calibrate those.
Yes.
And
yep.
Yeah, and then you can even go in command mode. It's just a little confusing because now your all your gestures are a little changed because you're holding the phone for one-handed mode in portrait mode.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden switch.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that. So if you're holding it in vertical portrait mode and you're typing with one hand, if you want to switch between command mode and and Braille entry mode, then you would flick with 3 fingers to the right, but now you're holding the phone vertically, so it may feel like, oh my god, am I unlocking the orientation or what am I doing? But it's really so it takes a little bit of exploring, but it really works. Right now I can type like that, but it's not much faster than if I would do QWERTY, but I'm pretty sure that if I wanted to practice it would go.
No, my typing in one-handed mode is not great, but like yourself, I think in two-handed mode, I'd give most sighted people a run for their money, I'd say. And I've never figured out the command mode in one-handed mode either. And sorry, just one final question. The gesture to switch Braille tables, is that a 2-finger flick down?
Flick up.
Flick up, okay. Yeah.
Because flick down will translate. Let's say you're writing a word and you normally Braille gets input onto the screen the moment you do a space bar by flicking to the right or an enter command. But if you want to translate something that you wrote partially, then you can do the 2-finger flick down.
Yes. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, no, really good demo. As a Braille enthusiast, I enjoyed it. So,
well, thank you. I mean, join the club.
And thanks, Alyssa. Mike, you have a question. Go ahead, please.
Hi there. I'd first just like to say thank you to you both. I've always been someone who's been a little hesitant to kind of jump towards the Braille inputs. My Braille being as rusty as it is, but this kind of gave me the incentive to kind of jump on in. That being said, I have kind of a bit of a two-question. For starters, have either of you had experience with both iOS and Android? And do you have a preference on either or?
John, you want to take that one and I'll respond as well?
Sure. I've used iOS some time ago. I haven't used it a lot recently as far as the Braille input. Let me see. I would say they're quite similar. It's hard for me to say since I've used Android less, so I'm not 100% sure on the accuracy side. But I would say the The input is quite similar, though as you saw, I think the iOS does have some more functionality than Android has, and at least right now, that's the only input that only options with Android is basically the input, and also you have Braille display output. I neglected to mention that at the beginning, but you have do you have if you have physical Braille display, then you have that output, and you can adjust. You can activate some quite a number of talkback and navigation commands and things with Braille keys, similar to a physical display on iOS. But as far as inputs, I would say um, they're quite similar. I think I would still be I would have to test both to get a feel for which I found to be more accurate. But as far as the general concept, I'd say they're quite similar as far as text entry.
They're both pretty welcoming to newcomers, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. There are some slight differences in that the Android has the tutorial. iOS does have the option where you can kind of a learn or explore mode where you can, when you're holding a dot down, you can hold tap other dots and kind of hear what dots you're pressing. So there's that advantage for a straight beginner. You get kind of those feedback of, okay, this is the dot two, this is the dot three position. But other than that, as far as I would say the Android side might be, I guess they're both a bit of a learning curve as far as they go. The Android side, you do have to kind of learn about the different keyboard inputs, enabling the keyboard, and how to switch keyboards, that kind of thing. And but there is also a talkback gesture you can set up to enable the Braille input keyboard. So if you find that you don't want to use the input switcher to enable it, you can set a custom talkback gesture so you can kind of avoid that step a little bit. So I would say that that would be the one as far as Android that you'd have just need to learn about the keyboard switching on the device, which is more of an Android specific, not so much accessibility, but just that learn that aspect. But I think they're overall, as long as you are familiar with whichever operating system, I think they're quite similar as far as picking it up as a beginner. They both have a slight learning curve.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I just have a slight iOS question. When I heard you typing your message, it sounded like you were using, I guess, like more slang in terms of your typing. It reminded me of, I'm going to age myself here, but MSN speak from back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like I don't know if you were spelling out the whole words or not. Is that something that is...
Oh, I think what I was doing is because I was writing contracted Braille.
Oh, okay.
It was like I would just write the Y and then I would press space and the thing will go U.
Okay.
So, but I think that you could see that even if I was to have typed with uncontracted Braille, it is still quite. I mean, I would say it's a comparable speed that I would use a Perkins Brailler, really.
Definitely.
So. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's what the thing. I do believe that I spelled everything out properly.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was the contracted.
Gotcha.
I did in demo, and that's the exploring mode, which is indeed. So I would say on my end, I tried both Android and iOS, and Android I know less, so I cannot really. I'm coming from the opposite side. It seems to me like the accuracy in terms of once I know how to type on the iPhone, I could use this and type on an Android tablet without any problems with comparable accuracy.
Oh, perfect.
Is it easier to learn? I don't know, but definitely in iOS, because you can use Braille anywhere, you could just practice it because it use it more just to open an app or to right now to explore this Braille command mode. So there are ways to just use Braille, not just for writing, but to perform commands. So I think that might encourage people to get better at using it without saying, okay, I have to sit down and write in Braille, but I can open an app in Braille,
Yeah.
which is nice enough.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it definitely has encouraged me to do so. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. We have two questions and we'll take them in order. Alyssa, I'm going to put you second. I know your hand's been up for a bit, but I'll go with Peg Mercer first, please. Peg, you need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Are you? Oh, you're.
There you go.
Looking for my mute. Hi, I'm Peg. I live in Vancouver. I'm using iPhone with iOS 26, and I just have a couple of questions. First of all, I probably missed this, but how would you? I don't need it for myself, but I just wanted to roughly know how one would set the a QWERTY keyboard, Bluetooth QWERTY keyboard, with the dot configurations for Braille. What setting?
I didn't cover it. I just mentioned it's
Okay.
possible, but I can tell you. There is in the Braille settings something called Braille input. I have to remember. I set it up. You
Okay.
can assign a command, and I think it's by default on a Braille QWERTY. So if you have a Bluetooth keyboard connected to your phone, then I think it's VO keys plus equals or plus Y. Anyways, but you can assign a gesture. Like you can go to your commands, add a command, and choose one that allows you to enable Braille input. It's called Braille input. So I would say do a search on Braille input.
Yeah.
And of course, we will for sure have some resources, and I can make sure to add that in the resources that we will send out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would be good. And then I know you weren't going to cover Braille access, but I just was trying to sort of figure out the basic point of it because I gather you use it in the Notes app, do you, to type Braille notes that you would read on a Braille display? Is that right? Like,
well, there are
I
many
mean-
things. That's just one of them. The Braille notes is one that you would use. The nice thing with that one is just it's very Braille centric, but it's more than just Braille notes. In Braille Access, it opens like a Braille menu, a Braille friendly menu that allows you to do a bunch of things. One is, let's say you have your Braille display with you, but your phone is on the other side of the room charging. You can go into Braille Access mode and open any app by typing the first few letters, kind of like what I did on the screen. You can also write Braille notes, which is less, I agree, maybe not, I mean, why would you want a Braille note when you can have it? But if you, for example, want to write some Braille pattern, and then you could really type on your QWERTY keyboard, it becomes automatically a Braille input device when you're writing Braille notes. But you have also the ability to, in this menu of Braille Access, to open a BRF file. So if you download it and it's on your iPhone or it's somewhere in Dropbox, you go there and so you can open BRF files and it remembers your reading position. You can add, you can search within it. You can even edit a BRF file. So that is huge.
Yeah, that's good. I was just the Braille, the note
the Braille
taking
notes,
part.
yeah.
Doesn't seem,
no,
like you would.
Doesn't seem so.
Well, no, I just wonder if because it says, oh, you can use your phone. You don't have to have your Braille, do the Braille display, but you need your Braille display to read them. So
yeah, for sure.
Stuck on what's real. It's
less useful, I suppose.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Good
presentation.
Now, thanks, Faith. Are there any other questions? I'm looking at the time. We'll quickly do a draw for the door prize. We are so fortunate. We from Humanware Canada, Michelle Pepin has provided a lucky participant with a Victor Stream 4, and I'm just
a 4.
Victor Stream 4 is the latest and the greatest. And we have Karen Brewer. Karen, are you here today? You are. If you could unmute And just let me know.
Yes, I'm here.
Karen, a Victor Stream 4 is for you from Humanware, and I'll connect with you with an email and connect you with the donor
Okay,
from
great.
Human. Yeah, great.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
from another wonderful prize from Canadian Assistive Technology, from Steve Barkley, is a Hable keyboard, and 6-key entry keyboard. And the winner for that, do we have Michelle Felix here? Michelle, are you with us still?
Hello, yes, Michelle Felix speaking.
Oh, good, great. So both Michelle and Kara, if you could maybe put in, if you don't mind putting into the chat, or I'll get your emails from you. If you could just hang on, don't hang up after the.
Okay, yeah, I'll hang
Yeah,
on,
I'd like,
yes.
yes. If we
Lovely,
disconnect
thanks.
and before we go on any further, thank you, thank you, thank you, John and Ioana, for a absolutely sterling presentation. We moved quickly through something that is just a life changer for having Braille on the go. I am just so thankful that you shared how to use iPhones and Androids, and the just the possibility with 6-key entry. It's fantastic. Thank you for your time and your expertise. For all of you who are participants, if you have questions that were not answered and you'd like to ask a question, you can email your question to Braille, Braille, at nels.ca. So it's Braille at nnels.ca. So Braille at nels.ca. And we'll get the questions to John and Ioana. Stay tuned. Ioana mentioned a handout. There will be an extensive handout provided. It's going to get tweaked a little bit before we send it out, and it will be going out to along with the YouTube. So when you go to find the YouTube presentation, you'll also find the handout there for downloading. And so that is available to you shortly. And I think that is everything. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Humanware Canada and Canadian Assistive Technology. Thank you, Ioana, and thank you, John, very, very much for your expertise. There any other
Thank you.
quick comments? Yeah, go ahead, Ioana.
No, I was just going to say thank you. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we're
And
really
sorry,
happy.
Daphne, is it Daphne? Sorry.
Yes, Alyssa, go ahead. You
Yeah,
had your
sorry, I think actually Mike is gone now. Mike, who asked the question about having used Android and iOS. I think he might be gone, but he might find the YouTube presentation and get to hear this anyway. I have used both extensively, I would say, iOS and Android. I've switched from operating system to operating system a few times and always come back to iOS. And I would say, from a point of view of Braille screen input, definitely, only in my opinion, but as a fluent Brailleist, iOS is superior in very many ways. Not the least of them being that you've got that command mode, which is very, very valuable, and also we have haptic feedback and sound feedback indeed for when we type, as well as obviously having whatever granularity you want read out as you type. But the command mode and then the sound and haptic feedback for typing, for me, put iOS's Braille screen input above Android slightly.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you for that.
Good information.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thanks, folks. Stay tuned for the recording, the transcript, and the handout. They'll be available soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And on behalf of the World Braille Day Planning Committee, we'll see you next year because we'll be back and there will be lots more events. Check out the NELS website. You'll find some materials for library access, how to include Braille in all sorts of programs within the library system. You'll also find on the NELS website information about Braille booths, which are downloadable tactile files for practicing Braille, practicing reading tactile graphics. Great for kids and great for beginner readers who have access to having files embossed. So lots happening for World Braille, and we'll see you next year. Thanks, everyone.